Hey Angelo, welcome to the show. Really honored to have you on. I've been watching you for a little over a year now on LinkedIn. I think anybody that's in the family office space has seen a post or two from you, and I'm honored to have you on and dig into your background.
I love it, Lenny. Thank you so much for your kind words. I do enjoy interviews and sharing my thoughts and opinions. So I've been in the industry. Man, I never would have thought I would have said I'm an OG, but I guess I've been around a little bit. So the beard may be getting a little grayer, but hopefully I still got it up here.
No, you're definitely providing value to the space. That's without question. So I guess Angelo, just to start off, would love for you to go into a little bit about your background and just your experience in the family office space. What does your early kind of life look like, and how were you able to transition into the family office space?
Okay, I'll see if I could give it kind of the condensed version. I mean, you did say early life. You could tell by a great name like Angelo, and like you, of course, with your mainly Lenny on your last name. I am half Italian and I'm half Puerto Rican, so I kind of very New York ethnic in terms of my background. I really enjoy both of my cultures. They're both special to me and very, very important. Had a tremendous mother, really a loving mother. I was very, very fortunate. I was not gifted. Well, I'm that almost makes it sound like I am now. I'm not gifted in anything in terms of academics. It came hard for me. I had a very short attention span. I was very entrepreneurial, which is a good thing from a young age. I would say I grew into, because I worked hard at it, who I would become in terms of from having a humble background relative to getting comfortable to be in front of people, being on stage, interviewing amazing people, Tony Robbins and others. And I actually flourish in that environment, but that's not organic. That comes from knowing that that's important, understanding communication is a very important skill, and actually practicing. When I first started to do more public speeches, right before I launched Family Office Association, I literally practiced and read books. That was a little bit before YouTube and stuff like that, and practiced a presentation like 200 times where
Wow.
it felt natural for me. And that gave me, I don't know if I believe in the word confidence because it can't be measured, but I do believe in the word competence. When you're competent at something and you have the ability to communicate, you're able to articulate your thoughts and have a conversation like we're having now. There was nothing in my background that would necessarily lead to the uber wealthy world of the family office community. Yes, I was involved in financial services and insurance. That kind of gave me a little bit of the entree. I'm a pretty vivacious reader and learner, so that was very important for me. I had a couple of great contacts in New York, Greenwich, and Miami, and that led me to look at, and I was probably at that time 41. So I was already, a little bit on the quasi older side of middle aged. You could argue that launching yet another company, and that company out of Greenwich, Connecticut, would launch me into the family office community, and that would be Family Office Association. I had incredible people that I reached out to, so I had to make it happen, that I got to know, that were, some would say mentorship, and I'm fine with that, that I learned from. And then a couple of months into FOA, that's Family Office Association, I met a wonderful man, Joe Riley, who would become the president of the organization. So you don't do this alone. It really does take a village. It's important to be competent and to always be learning, but to put your ego aside. And Ray Dalio talks about be competent, identify your blind spots. We all have them. Move your ego aside and build something special. It's not all about you. So it was incredible people like some of those that I mentioned, and future presidents like Ryan Anson, that were every bit as integral as I was to building Family Office Association into a premier membership and events organization primarily dedicated to the single family office community.
No, that's awesome. Really appreciate that background, and I think we can segue into just the last comment that you made towards the end there. For some of the listeners that are just tuning in, as I mentioned to you in the green room, there's people that necessarily don't even know what a family office is, what a single family office, what a multifamily office. So given your background in starting that type of organization, can you just give a little bit more color on, what even is a family office?
Sure. My definition and what we primarily did at Family Office Association, which I sold my final interest earlier this year in 2023. I'm in other endeavors in the family office community now, which will inevitably, of course, segue into. So for me, my focus has always been very, very narrow. It's on the single family office, the traditional verbiage of family office and the original definition, an entity and talent internally dedicated to one family that has incredible wealth. And it's dedicated to their wealth, not just financial wealth, although obviously that's a part of it, inclusive of taxes and wealth transfer, but so much deeper to the family. And we may have a chance to get into the greatest threat to these families. They're already very, very rich. Is it investing? Is it taxes? Is it estate or lack of estate planning? All of those are very important and can be contributors. But the greatest threat to the ultra wealthy effectively is the family. So ironically, the greatest threat to the family is the family. And part of that has to do with the rising generations. I don't know if we're going to have time to do a deep dive into encouraging and educating on capacity and capability that leads to their competency, and talking a little bit more about governance and bottom up and being inclusive in the governance process and decision making in the family. So all those things are crucial. And for me, I just loved it, Lenny. Like it just became something that I would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, would work often. I'm not going to say every day, but to 12, 1, 2 o'clock, reading, learning, emailing around the world because people are up at all different times and they don't care that I'm on the East Coast. I have to be responsive to them. And some would say that I maybe sacrificed a little bit of my personal life, and perhaps we all have some regrets. I would do some things differently, but I don't know how to be an entrepreneur if you're not all in. And I had my faults. I still do, but there's no question that I have passion about this community. I really do care about it. And it's important for me to build my legacy in it, which I've done for 17, 18 years now, imperfectly. Trust me, imperfectly. But that opportunity to fall in love with this community and then get embraced by it, and then hopefully for a good number of those years, execute and get things done. And I didn't start off being a deeper thinker or thought leader. I kind of wanted just to build it, put things together, kind of connect the dots. I mean, honestly, my first 5 years, probably people didn't hear me talk too much. I was the hard worker behind the scenes, doing the things that don't necessarily always get credit as well. And then from there, I developed the competency that allowed me to write white papers, be a deeper thinker, have original thoughts, write a book. Now I've done 400 plus digital interviews on varying YouTube or podcasting platforms, and I'm still a novice. Having known 40 plus billionaires, having seen and been engaged with 2,000 plus family offices, having traveled all over the world, including in a couple of days going again to Austria, this is amazing. But I heard something that the greatest judo master said, and it stuck with me. He was on his deathbed, and he was whatever, a 10th degree black belt. And he said, I'm going to die. Bury me, please. Honor me. Bury me in a white belt. Be a person of the people. Be humble. Have an opportunity to know that we all have to take a first step. There was nothing about my background, from either my education or my family background, that would have dictated being involved, especially in the single family office community, which are usually going to be families at a couple of $100 million and up. But sometimes ignorance could be good, and having a little bit, although I don't necessarily perfectly believe in the word confidence, but competence, maybe faking a little bit of it until you make it, and simply just moving forward, taking action and iterating as I go along. That was important for me. So now yes, I have a little bit of a level of stature, a level of competency that partially comes from my experiences, not just academia and reading, but taking action, being involved, and knowing these amazing people, many of them being amazing, and the opportunity for me to learn and develop into a so-called thought leader. But please, again, when my time is up, and who knows when that will be, bury me in my white belt too. That's what I want.
No, that's awesome. That's what I wanted to touch on, because it sounds like you really built a lot of these different skills to kind of, create the version, of yourself that you are today. The one comment that stood out to me, Angelo, was you said you didn't get the credit necessarily for what you were doing to really build yourself to kind of get to where you are, and some of the stuff that you were doing behind the scenes. So can you open that up a little bit, and just kind of give a little bit more of an opportunity for us to kind of see a little bit deeper on what exactly were some of those things that you were doing?
Yeah, I mean, I've been around the block a little bit. Not young. Don't underestimate me though. I could still get on the football field, still get on the basketball court, and still do some damages that are pretty impressive for my age in the weight room. I do dabble in a little bit of above 55 fitness competitions too. So those days are probably coming to an end, but I've been saying that for about a year or two. So who knows?
That's good.
So I do remember when the internet, first became more quasi widely available, AOL and dial-up modems, 93, 94. And it just opened up the opportunity to interact with the world and to get educated quicker. Like, honestly, probably nothing to be that proud of. I haven't been in a library in a long, long time. But the advent of the internet, the advent of how the world is now in social engagement and social media, the advent, of course, back around that same time of Amazon, just changes a lot of dynamics. Younger people like you just don't have any understanding of how it used to be back in the 70s and 80s, and even up through, to some degree, really the iPhone in 2008, and the advent then of social media growing. I mean, really, this is all kind of 15 years old, and it just, I don't know, it feels like it's always been with us. On the other hand, it may be too much information coming at us too quickly. But that opportunity to learn by going on the internet, by reaching out, oh, like this person is this, and this person's the head of private banking there, and this person, I see they just launched a family office. Why don't I try to source them and reach out to them? And that's easier now in some ways, mainly through social media, than ever before. And of course, like anything in life, I got rejected more than I got accepted. But to me, that just made it, I was one step closer to, one, proving my grit, knowing that things don't come easy, and the opportunity to know that not everyone is going to say no. Maybe it's 1 in 10 is saying yes. So great, if I get 9 no's in a row, the odds are then the next one is going to be, sure, let's have a chance to interact, to meet, to engage, whatever it might be. So I had a very base knowledge of the family office world, honestly, a little bit from insurance and financial services and some of the work I did with hedge fund managers. But the opportunity, I mean, I really did kind of learn on the job, and it doesn't happen overnight. People may look at that now and say, that's an overnight success. No, it wasn't. I'm like, kind of what, 17, 18 years in now, and I'm still feeling I have so much more to learn. So it's hard work, but you got to leverage the opportunity around you. We all have mentors, and I'm trying to be a little philosophical. I dabble in a little bit of philosophy pretty badly, but I dabble in that in poetry. But the opportunity to be mentored by amazing people that are long since dead, meaning books. Like, hello, young people. It's not just all about the internet, but of course you can Kindle. Even I mainly use Kindle now. But reading books about the greats, about the Greek philosophers, about Seneca, Napoleon. They have the pretty bad movie out there now, but what an amazing general. And all these amazing people, Napoleon Hill, and so many others, deep thinkers, Gandhi, thought leaders, philosophers, Nietzsche, etc. The opportunity to even Sigmund Freud's book, which was super small, but really impactful. So read, absorb, take notes, think through things yourself. A billionaire that I interviewed, he's known as being a Bitcoin legend, but much more than that, Michael Saylor, said the greatest thing he learned at MIT was to think for himself. And I think in today's world, all that's going on geopolitically, all that's going on with extremes from, let's call it both sides, the opportunity to reflect, to shift through the noise, and how to properly form a thesis and come to your own conclusion. But don't be so hard-headed that new information can't come in or adapt as time goes on, and we need to change that opinion. So that's happened to me multiple times. So it's very interesting times that we're living in now, in some ways easier, in some ways harder. But the family office world, unlike when I launched what feels like many a decade ago, I could go to a university now, which I do, and speak in front of certain groups, and they all know what a family office is. That was not the case, trust me, wow, 15, 20 years ago. And off the top of my head, I believe collectively the family office community is about 11 to 12 trillion. So it's much bigger than the hedge fund community. I would never have guessed that, being partially headquartered in Greenwich 15 years ago. And it's growing. Like, this is a global phenomenon. That's why I travel the world. That's why I'm off to Austria in a couple of days. It's not just here in the grand old USA. It really is around the world.
No, that's awesome. And you mentioned mentorship a couple of times. So I do want to transition a little bit more into some of the points that you were touching on before: governance, the family structure, how they operate as a family, that being kind of the threat within the process of growing the family's wealth. So, how do you see mentorship, helping the families, and how have you been, played an effective part in that?
Yeah, I mean, you have to have and I almost used the word confidence, but I really mean competence. It's not easy for anyone to have a face-to-face, a phone call, a lunch, a dinner with an incredibly successful person, 100 million, 300 million. And I hate to define success solely by money, but let's also be honest, it is something that is more quantifiable and measurable. As we get to know someone, we get to understand their character, their perspective as if it's applicable, a family person, and that all goes into the total picture that we have of them, and that's very important. But initially, in the community that we're in, that I'm talking about, money is somewhat quantifiable. So imagine going face to face with a billionaire, which of course I was nervous initially at first too. And then you realize they're people just like you. Some of them do come from a wealthy background, some are middle class, some poor. They'll often be the first one to tell you over a good glass of a Woodford Reserve that it was a combination of their gumption, their smarts, and a little bit of timing that just happened to be right. But I don't know if anyone did it alone. There's mentorship from hopefully quality parents that we have, from hopefully quality teachers, from peers, and from others. And again, indirectly, and I'm trying to be a little cute, what I said before, but with books and videos and things like that, although we can't necessarily, till AI gets way better, which probably is a week away, can't necessarily interact with, quote unquote, those incredible people that are dead. But the opportunity of crystallizing their thoughts and then again, coming to our own conclusion, just because we have a mentor, and we should, again, identify our blind spots and move ego aside, doesn't mean that everything that someone tells you or what you read is necessarily, it's not that it's wrong, although it might be. It may not be factual, it may be opinion, but the conditions around it and around the world are very different now than they were, oh my God, like a month ago, let alone 5 or 10 years ago. So it's an amazing time. But the bigger picture I was getting to is it's not easy for people to sometimes, and this took me a couple of years, and it probably cost me money and got me in trouble, but it makes me, I wouldn't say feel good inside, but know that I'm speaking the truth as I see it to someone who has way, way more money than I have. And that is, don't kiss their butt. Don't become the gatekeeper who gatekeeps the world from your principal. If they're not in the trenches, they're gonna fall behind and not be good models as well to their children, their grandchildren. So, I mean, I look at someone like Elon and others, I mean, they're down there in the trenches. They know exactly in their businesses and in their interest what's going on. I'm not saying that they didn't make personal sacrifices, that they're the maybe most dedicated fathers or mothers, whatever. It's difficult. You can't always be great at everything. But again, the big picture I was getting to is sometimes you have to look them in the eye and tell them that idea that you just had, that you're telling me about your family office, about doing this with your son or a family member, it's bullshit. I don't like it and it's wrong. People don't speak up to people who are incredibly successful. And I get it. It's cost me some money. There's no doubt about it. It's also gotten me a little bit of respect. Like, don't be afraid to speak your mind, because when everyone around you is a yes person who's kissing your ass, if I'm allowed to say that on your YouTube, that's not good. Like, you want someone who's going to someone who's smart, who's going to challenge you. Like, that's what you want. And then at the end of the day, yes, again, you make your own decision. Because I don't know if an entrepreneurial endeavor to start a business is really ever the logical move. If you're smart and talented and you have employment opportunities into the six figures or more, you're going to give that up to become an entrepreneur and start your own thing. But sometimes that is just in our heart and it's who we are. And, you know, maybe I was like that from a younger age, probably. But that doesn't mean that it's not something that can't be taught. And by putting yourself out there and the experiences of doing it, that you can't become that entrepreneur. What's a problem that you see among the people you deal with or the clientele you're looking for that is unsolved or not solved properly? And I looked at the family office space back again, many a decade ago, and felt, yeah, there was some interesting thought leaders and organizations, but it was small, fragmented, and there was an opportunity. Now it's gotten more crowded lately. I think often crowded with not so good. But for those looking from the outside in that don't know what they don't know, I'm not going to say ignorant, but they just don't know what they don't know. They probably can't tell, quote unquote, the good from the bad.
Right.
They may look at me as being a little brash, a little loud, a little overly opinionated, but that comes from a level of experiences and competency that I have. And again, the first one to admit here in my microphone, I make a lot of mistakes. I hopefully realize them, adapt, and get better.
No, that's great. And so in terms of the governance, you know, what are some situations that you've seen to, you know, build that effective governance within the family? I mean, because even to your point, you know, I've noticed, you know, having conversations with very, you know, wealthy people that would be considered, you know, a smaller kind of family office, or they can, you know, be plugged into maybe a multifamily office, you know, never even knew that, you know, these type of communities or structures, you know, even existed. So, you know, just kind of curious to see, you know, what are some of the effective ways that you've seen that incorporated into these families?
Kudos to you, Lenny. I would say most people that I would talk to, and I promised the audience there was nothing planned in this. He didn't share questions. I wanted it to be more natural. I don't like to be overly prepared. Maybe that means I'm a little rougher around the edges and not quite as polished, and I'm okay with that. Again, I'm an Italian Latin kid from New York, so I kind of like to be a little bit, let's roll up the sleeves and get down.
For sure.
What I was also saying is most people would constantly dive into money, money, money. And again, I love investing. I want to talk about investment policy statements, asset allocation, Bitcoin, gold. Is commercial real estate going to crap? What's going on with residential real estate? The world is in turmoil. All amazing stuff that maybe in the future, because a lot of the discussions that I do on my YouTube and my Family Office TV are on geopolitics, are on economics. And unlike many people in the family office world, I bring that into a sophisticated discussion. They're often long form, by the way, and they could get a little, I wouldn't say combative, but I'm not afraid to do some Joe Rogan like thoughts and questions to my audience. My industry tends to be very vanilla, very down the middle, don't rock the boat. And no, I kind of like to rock the boat. Even if I get whipped in the debate, if you want to call it a debate, and it's all good. It's happened to me before. I'm sure it's going to happen again. But very few young people like yourself would lead a little bit with governance. And now I hinted earlier, the greatest threat to the family is the family. If the family doesn't get that right, the generations of wealth, no matter how you define the wealth, will not last. There'll be infighting, there'll be bad personal decisions and marriages and divorces, and a lack of the family thinking together, being of value in making joint decisions, which effectively is what governance is. I would say a big problem that people make, it's understandable being a not so successful entrepreneur like myself, is we do tend to like to be, I think Warren Buffett said, I like a committee of, that's an odd number and it's less than 3, meaning him. Now, in Warren's case, that's probably very justified, but in everyone else's case, maybe that's not the greatest idea. So that's a dictatorship. That's a kingdom. It's very easy. And if it's the patriarch and the matriarch and a 3-year-old, well, yeah, like I guess that is the de facto. But as the family grows and the person becomes somewhat of age, and now there may be other family members and married in, it gets more complicated. So top down is easy, and in some cases it could be effective, but that doesn't mean it's going to be sustainable. And you have to look at bottom up. You have to be more inclusive. And it's not easy for me to say, because I kind of want to be a little bit of the dictator myself. I understand it. Trust me, I do. But the opportunity, I mean, now that I have a 20-year-old, so for me, like, my God, I know I'm not the dictator. I get told I'm wrong all the time. But you know what? I learn a lot from my son as well. And sometimes he's actually the more mature one relative to me in terms of reminding me about certain things and having me have a different perspective than I might have had. So I think it's very, very important. It's not just what I think, it's what I know. It's what I've seen for decades in my traveling the world and having had conversations with literally probably the 3 oldest families of great wealth in America and some of the oldest 15-generation plus families in Europe, in Sweden, in the UK, in Austria, in Switzerland. I mean, they're going to tell you these things as well. So how a family jointly makes decisions, the character of the rising generation, their capacity and capability leading to their competency, and communication. There's often this fallacy that we're communicating. I'm like, no, you're not. Like sending a text or an email once in a while is not good enough. Like, is there clarity? Do you have a mission in the family? What's your vision statement? What's the purpose of wealth? What's the purpose of even the existence of the family and of the family office? What value is the family office providing? So these are all very, very important questions. There's a married-in executive in a multi-billion-dollar family office, and the lead principal was a well-known person in financial services that passed away this year, billions of dollars. And the person I'm talking of, his name is Scott, and he wrote in an article in Family Firm Institute, a wonderful organization, 60-30-10. What he means is 60% of a family office's time is usually dedicated to money, 30% broadly to legal and tax, and 10% to family. And he chuckles, knowing what it's like to be in a multi-billion-dollar family from both the executive and the family side, like that should be reversed. Like there should be a chief learning officer working with the family on the importance of mission, vision, governance, and purpose, of helping with the rising generations, not just a school education, because there's lots of things that you don't learn in school. So the opportunity, again, of capacity, the ability to adapt and capability is very important, leading the competency. There will be no family continuity the way that the majority of wealthy families are currently doing it and structured, meaning there won't be continuity through the generations. And this has been proven, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves, commonly in 3 generations. Don't blame investing in taxes. That could be a part of it in certain situations. It's going to be the issues that I'm describing. So if the greatest threat to the family is the family, how come the family office, at best, I think he was generous, at best is dedicating 10% of their time
Yeah.
to issues in the family? There should be a chief learning officer dedicated like 100% of their time to issues within the family. So I think that was a very good point. Kudos to Scott Peppett for writing that and his great work that he continues to do in the community. And again, so many talented people that I learned from. I'm so fortunate.
No, that's awesome. And I think, just how you really got into the kind of the back end dynamic of the family, what are some of the trends that you're seeing? Are you seeing a change in the principles and values amongst these families across the board? And maybe not change in a bad way, or maybe it is, or, what is that kind of, evolution? What is that looking like in the space?
Yeah, I mean, yes. And to give a little bit of context to my answer to that for probably 99% of the audience that doesn't know me, there's no reason to know me. I'm most known in the community for being the founder of Family Office Association, a labor of love of mine. I greatly enjoyed it. I sold my final interest earlier this year. I wish the new team nothing but the best, and there's some good people there, and I'm sure that they're going to do a great job. But I had a very, very good run for a number of years. I took a little time off, traveled, reflected, was humbled, learned a lot of lessons, really learned from the mistakes that I made more than a couple of things that I might have done right. So that was really an important lesson for me. And again, you never stop learning, even when you're older like me. So the opportunity just a couple of months ago to officially launch my Family Office TV is my more media platform in the family office community, SFO Continuity as a private membership organization, and Family Office Masterclass dedicated to teaching deeper immersive education within the family office world. Going back to your first question, what is a family office and how do they kind of work? So the important aspects, to some degree, in answering your question, there is no family office without people. So the family and the non-family member executives in the family office, your people are by far 85% the determinant of success in the family office, probably followed by systems, which people create, but okay, we'll call it separate, and technology. So you could mess up on the ladder too, and it won't help you, but you can overcome it and you'll get better at it. You'll figure it out. You mess up on people, that might be it. So, oh, but I only hire smart people. Well, how do you quantify their smartness relative to what the goals in your family office are? So it's not just enough to have so-called smart people. That's important. You want them to be well incentivized, to have them be motivated and retain them. I agree, that's important, but that's not enough. Like, what's the governance, not just in the family, but how are decisions made and kind of governance and structures in the family office? Is it optimized? And if I'm coming on as a new employee, where's my 90-day plan? Where's my 6-month plan? And these are all things that I do now. And it took me like 20 years to learn it, and why I developed my family office playbook, my family office masterclasses, and my consultancy to work with families to have their family office become incredible. There's an analogy that I give in sports, and I know I'm going in a little different direction with your question, but I think it's important in terms of giving it the context.
This is good.
You could be the 15th man on an NBA basketball team, and kudos to you. That's way more accomplished than 99.999% of others. You're probably never, well, not probably, you're never going to be a Michael Jordan or LeBron James, no matter what you eat, no matter what your workout is, no matter what coaches you have, all things that are important and you should do, and you should look to get better and move up. But it's so quantifiable by statistics, by championships, and our eyes. We know Michael Jordan's great, LeBron James is great, Kobe Bryant was great. We just see that, and the numbers help to back that up, and the rings on their finger really help to cement that. Millions and millions of people, if not hundreds of millions, play basketball. So to reach the top, is incredibly quantifiable and easy to see. It's not the case in the family office. It's far smaller, it's opaque, it's hard to benchmark and quantify because other than certain things with investing or risk, it's harder to quantify. A good part of it is still qualitative. Now, I have opinions on that we could save a little bit for a different subject or a different podcast. What I'm basically trying to say is you could go from, the odds are you're probably pretty mediocre. You actually could go from mediocrity to good. Now, the great author and other mentor type, Jim Collins of Good to Great and Built to Last, the difference between good to great, I don't know, it may only be 7 or 8%, but damn it, that 7 or 8% is really, really hard. So that is going to take some work. So the opportunity of having a plan, what's your process to get to where you want to get to? What are the goals? Are they aspirational goals? Are they more like OKRs, your objectives and key results? You need to have more quantifiable measures and metrics, and you need to hold more institutional and rigorous standards to a family office. It should strive to be great. If you're not in it to be great, why even be in it? Most family offices, and well, everything fails in a long enough time horizon, maybe hundreds of years for some companies. So everything kind of goes to zero, but family offices rarely, I would say, last more than 15 years. And to some degree, that's kind of sad, given that I'm so focused on the single family office community. I love it. I want them to do well. And I want to provide a level of experiences that I have to help them. Like, what are their biggest problems? It differs from family, but there's going to be some rhyming you're going to feel after, in my case, doing this for so many years. And again, a lot of it's going to come back to goal setting, having a structure in place to succeed, incredible communication and governance are all kind of timeless and going to be standards in terms of a successful family office. In answering your question from a little different twist, post-COVID, we're now in a greatly remote world. So the days of people coming into a traditional 11-person single family office, I mean, sure, still there, but you have employees from around the world. The world is your oyster now. And for a talented employee, the world is your oyster as well in terms of the freedoms you have where you could work. Now, this assumes you built up the competency and the credibility. And no, as a 22-year-old, what the hell? Like, you don't have that yet, unless you're some kind of mathematical genius and the family has a need for you from that perspective. So training and mentoring in the family office is kind of hard to do. And having your career track for younger employees, if you don't have at least 3 to 4 days a week, in my opinion, in a set location with peers. Now, my opinions on that may adapt. Let's see how AI is continuing to develop. I'm pretty on top of broadly technology and other reporting programs and training modules, and very soon, probably 3D training with AI. So it's all getting better. So it's good in some ways and more challenging maybe for a younger person looking at the family office world as a career track. I mean, one of the other things that I do is helping to match a family of great wealth that is looking to create a family office from scratch, or to reconfigure or add to an existing family office. Again, people are the number one thing by far. So the opportunity of kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Recruiting, matching talent that is going to be the right fit. Doesn't mean they have the highest IQ. Again, not a bad thing. It helps. But you want to have it be a good fit. You do want to screen out for people that are narcissists and psychopaths. And I know I'm getting on a little bit of a tangent here. There actually are biological reasons why people may have some traits like that. And in certain fields, like in sales, narcissism might actually be good. I know this is hard for some people to take. And I could argue in certain aspects of the military, the other one that I mentioned may, for certain aspects, have some value. So I'm actually always intrigued by evolutionary biology and, again, history and how humans make decisions, how our bodies work. All those things fascinate me. I wish they fascinated me back when I was in my school age, but not really. I didn't have the attention span back then. And I was deemed to be someone who, just go into the blue collar trades as a mason or someone like that, which I loved. I did some of that when I was in high school, but again, I just couldn't help it. Kind of started to go down some different paths. So these are all intriguing changes in the family office community, but the more that I'm around, the problems kind of are similar. 15, 17 years ago, probably 30 to 40 years ago, just with the added twist of social media, of too much coming at us and being overwhelmed, and the challenges to the younger generation arguably being coerced or not thinking for themselves as much as they could. And these are all the concerns, if you want to call them the elders of a family. And I try to bridge the gap a little bit, like, listen, you're a little old, you're kind of stuck in your ways. Your way of thinking is not, you want your child to be a steward of your wealth and legacy. Do you think being a steward, and I learned this from the great thinker Charles Lowenhall, do you think they really want to be a steward? Does that sound like an exciting position for a young, dynamic person? You need to be a steward of our family brand, legacy, and wealth. I think of that as being a burden. So there needs to be a level of balance, respect for the elders and what came before and what they built, but respect for the minds of the young people as well. And it has a different perspective, different social interests. And again, this comes back a little bit again to governance. Are you top down telling how it's going to be done? Or is it more bottom up where there's a level of some level of compromise? Sure, but a level of mutual respect and understanding. And that comes sometimes from debating ideas. And when you debate, it may get a little loud. There may be a little bit of, there shouldn't be sore feelings, because again, you want to have smart people debate ideas to help to come to what you think is going to be the best decision to move forward. I gave you the longest answer ever to like a pretty simple question, so pardon me.
No, that was great. I mean, it's a good segue to what we have next, but all that information was incredible about governance. I think to your point, it's for me, I'm curious about it because it is the foundation of how the family operates. So really appreciate that background. But I want to get into kind of the this section of the episode here where it's called the Family Office Fire 5 round, where it's 5 set questions that I ask every guest, and we can run through them fairly quickly. But the first one here is, what is a common misconception about your field of expertise that you would like to debunk?
Wow, that's a good question. And I told the audience I didn't know what these were going to be, didn't want to know.
Yeah.
Again, 15 years ago, like no one knew about it. Now, like I said, it's a little bit more well known. It's not a great answer, but I hinted at it a little bit earlier when I gave you kudos for asking a hard question before you even got to investing, and we didn't even get to that at all, but on governance. And that is, sometimes when I talk to the younger ones in universities, or those that may be in legal, accounting, or finance in their 20s and are looking at the opportunity potentially in a family office, especially since I do dabble in connecting the dots between people and talent, aka some level of recruiting. So they tend to be very investing focused. Like, it's more than just limiting it to your competency, even if it happens to be tax and legal. Do you have the experiences yet? Are you willing to learn, to be mentored? There may be advantages to being at a larger legal, accounting, or financial firm that is global, that is giving you the experiences more than just one family, where you may not be busy enough. But understanding the dynamics of families, the dynamic of the wealth creators, the inheritors, the rising generation, again, how decisions are made, governance. There's so much. Yes, some of it is science, a lot of it is art. And you're young. I mean, everyone, Sid Bass hired Richard Rainwater in his family office away from Goldman when Rainwater, would become a legendary multi-billionaire investor. I think when Rainwater was 26, I wrote something about this, what really took off for me about 7 or 8 years ago. That was incredible. Sid Bass is incredible and Richard Rainwater is incredible. That doesn't mean that it's going to work out in every scenario. And there might have been some dynamics that made that work out better back in those days in the 70s than maybe it would work out now. So it's more than just investing or your competency in tax and legal. There's a lot more to the family office community than that. And those are among the things in my programs that I look to teach. I wouldn't say that I have a certification program or something like that yet, but I've been disappointed by what the industry has come up with. I am not a fan of what the universities have come up with in their kind of quasi family office curriculum. That's not to say that there's not exceptions to that. And on some family business and certain things in governance, some good things to learn, but generally I've not been impressed by it. So that led me also, again, to make my decision this past summer in 2023 in terms of what I'm doing, why I'm traveling, and what I'm building.
No, that's awesome. Really appreciate that answer. And so for the second question, what is the most memorable or unusual experience you've had in your professional journey?
In the family office world, I mean, I've been so fortunate having either reached out to and then led on stage and introduced amazing people like Peter Thiel, Ray Dalio, Tudor Jones, philanthropists, political leaders, military people like General Wesley Clark, former director of the CIA, Jim Woolsey. An interview, there's one that I had a chance to introduce. He's a philanthropist. His name is Scott Harrison. Boy, it's going back about 10 years. But he gave such a dynamic presentation that kind of brought tears to almost everyone's eyes in the audience. So the opportunity for me to reach out to Scott, to have a feeling he would be an amazing speaker, to put him in a keynote role and to impact my audience, telling the story as I remember multiple stories. One was very sad, unfortunately, of a young lady that passed away when she was 11 or 12, if I remember correctly. And it was a terrible story, a car accident, but the passion and love of the young lady for something specific and have the family continue that legacy. And other stories that he told were simply a woman, and I forgot what country in Africa, just having the opportunity to use water to wash her face, let alone a drink. And that was like such a luxury. And we take so many things for granted in this country and around the world. In many ways, we're very, very fortunate. And a lot of us are not even living up to our capability of what we could be. Like, wake up, like you could be so much more. Know who you are now, including me, for 99% of us. That's not the best version of yourself. You should be getting a little bit better each day. That doesn't mean that you're not going to fall back a little bit. You're not going to make mistakes. You will. But the opportunity to get a little bit better. When people tell you just be yourself, honestly, that's kind of cap. They really should be saying be the best version of yourself. And that does lead me into my second person who spoke about some of those principles. But in 2019, in the summer in Santa Monica in California, spending about an hour and 40 minutes on stage interviewing Tony Robbins was a tremendous opportunity. Tony is an imperfect person, just like all of us. Sure, he's made mistakes. But his story of, I think it might have been dropping out of high school and sleeping in a bathtub. And again, he's like 6'7", 280 pounds. So it's probably not so easy.
Not easy, no.
And then growing an enterprise, becoming a billionaire, and being someone who really looks to help people, and talking about some of the philosophies. Maybe that's where I picked it up that I just spoke about there. Becoming the best version of yourself is very, very important. So those were two among so many that stand out. I think I had 2 couples get married inside my old family office association. Don't reach out to me if you had a divorce. I want to imagine it still is a great marriage after all these years.
That's awesome. That's a great answer. The third one that I have here is, what is one piece of advice you would give to someone just starting a career in the family office space, or wanting to start a career in the family office space?
Yeah, I mean, if you're young coming out of college, it's very hard to get a job. I mean, maybe you were interned in a family office, so I guess it's possible. Now, again, I'm more of an SFO, single family office. There's far fewer of them. They're more opaque. There's way more RIAs, multifamily offices. We didn't have the time to get into the rise of virtual family offices, which still could be a single family office that is effectively more remote and uses technology. But you're probably going to go into among the big three that I mentioned before: finance, legal, or accounting. And that could lead your way in time into the family office world. Worry about your capacity and your capability. Become competent. You are not competent at age 21 or 22, with incredibly rare exceptions. Just work hard. Like the young people today, I'm seeing a little bit too much. They're giving up. They have too much negative news coming at them from TikTok and crap like that about all that's going on in the world. And trust me, I know there's a lot going on. I have a masterclass I teach about sovereign risk and disaster preparedness. So I could definitely be the glass is half full kind of guy. But I could also say I have a choice. I could be the glass is half full. It's not just half empty. That's what I meant. And I think you have to think more positive thoughts. I think you have to go to bed with good things on your mind. And I don't mean to get woo-woo or the secret, because I do think some of that is just flat out bullshit. But, and again, maybe I learned a little bit of this from Tony Robbins. Your inner frame and what you think kind of becomes a reality, because it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So be aware of what could go wrong. I get it. Very important. Hedge risk where you can, but be an optimist. Think about how you can move forward and have a happy life, have a great career. And some of that's going to come from your internal frame. You got to work on that. From your competency, become competent. Remember how I told the story of really learning through books, through videos, and through taking action and doing and interacting. It's okay to fail. Like, stop being afraid of getting rejected. Like the audience today, I don't know, like especially younger men, I'm not seeing a lot that's getting me overly excited, but I think there's things that we could do, that they could do to help change some of that, quote unquote, that paradigm that I think is important. And maybe I'll leave a little bit of a final tip, which all ties into that. Well, maybe two. How about that? A double bonus. Discipline. You're not always going to be motivated. I work out. Do you think every day that I work out that I'm incredibly motivated and that I want to do it? No, maybe 20% of the time, when I really tie in my goal and that gets me excited. But it's discipline. You have to be disciplined. You want this magic to happen in your 20s. Like, it's going to take time. You need to become competent. You need to prove yourself in the business world to make money. And you do need to control your emotions. That's my back part of quote unquote discipline. It's very, very important. Don't play the victim. Don't get triggered so easily. Control your emotions. I'm not saying be stoic on everything. Sometimes we all slip. This year, I watched enough New York Giants football games to swear at the TV and, I do things I'm not proud of at my age, damn it. So we all let our emotions slip sometimes, trying to be a little comical. But discipline and controlling emotions, to me, it's an opinion. I guess it's not a hard fact. It's very important.
No, that's awesome. And so I have the fourth one here, which is, what are some of your personal core values for you and your family?
It's a little bit of the shoemaker's son. You're too young to know that phrase, and probably most of the audience, but the shoemaker is a great shoemaker, but they probably don't pay enough attention to their own family shoes. That's the gist of that saying, which was probably more popular back 50, 60 years ago. So there's I could do better. From all that I've learned from the most amazing thinkers, from feedback from families, to picking up and getting a text from a billionaire or someone that I know that I can learn so much from, and I have, and that I impart to others. And I've done some things very well, but other things I would have done differently. So, like Sinatra said in his song, regrets, I have a few, but it's the opportunity to move forward. It's never too late to redefine your purpose, to develop your own internal mission and vision, to engage your family and your loved ones, and to have that opportunity you can't change the past. You could hopefully learn from it, but it is the past. You're here in the present now, and the future is still to be determined. And the actions that you take today, right this moment, again, be the best version of yourself and start that today, happens today. You have a choice. Is it half full or is it half empty? You're better off having the internal frame and mindset and moving together with your loved ones and your family that the glass is half full. You're going to do everything you could, coupled with what I said earlier about discipline and controlling your emotions. Like, it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy in today's world, but if you're only relying on motivation, as I did state a couple of minutes ago, that will let you down. It's just not going to work 100% of the time, probably not even 50% of the time. So, not the perfect answer to your question, but it's the one I'm giving.
No, it's great. And then the last one here is, where do you see the family office space, where do you see the family office space headed over the next 5 years?
Well, it's getting bigger. Now, there was a dip to the super rich 2022, bad markets, but this year has been up. You look at the rise of China, of India, broadly Asia, and the opportunity. So I look at it as the rise of the virtual family office, which is more outsourcing, greater utilization of technology. And AI is kind of exciting and a little scary. And one of the programs I'm working on is family offices and AI. So we could control really only what we think and the actions that we take. So the opportunity to simply just move forward. So I think the family office world is going to be incredibly bright. I think there'll be opportunity for families to, I hope, create a family office, to believe in the vision of their family dynamic and legacy. And by the way, who says that the family financial wealth really doesn't have to last generation after generation after generation? There may be some good points to wealth needs to be reborn, recreated, a sense of spirit, a sense of determination inside the rising family members. Now, we didn't have enough time to do a really deep dive into that. But the whole point of the single family office becoming more virtual, the rise of AI, more formality and rigorous and institutional level, there's lots of room for improvement, because the honest answer, I think, and I know this makes people upset in the community when I talk about it, but as you try to benchmark, and it's very hard to do in a single family office world, you see too much mediocrity. And it's the opportunity, like I said, to go from there to good, and possibly for some, again, respect to Jim Collins, from good to great. And be familiar with that. Be familiar with what has come in the past to help have an opportunity to understand how things may rhyme to some degree in the future. I enjoy that I've dabbled in philosophy and poetry, in some of the greats that came many a year ago, some over hundreds of years ago, and having the opportunity to form my own thoughts about how things could shape up and what could happen in the future. What will the future look like? These are all fascinating and intriguing things to me. I look to be the optimist and have an optimistic perspective. And I do think that families of great wealth could absolutely make an impact. They have an opportunity with their knowledge, their connectivity, and their capital and their resources in charitable and philanthropy and initiatives. And generally, Americans of great wealth have been, broadly speaking, very good philanthropists. And it's starting to catch up in other parts of the world. Engage the family. The young ones do have something to teach you, elders. I know I'm closer to an elder than I am certainly a Gen Z. I get it. I'm not quite a baby boomer, actually, but call me an elder. Why not? We do have a lot to learn from some of you as well. And you do add a level of vibrancy and connectivity and communication and all that's happening technology wise in today's world, where hopefully it's going to be mutually beneficial to all. And again, I choose to have a positive outlook.
No, that's awesome. Really appreciate that, Angelo. So I guess to end off here, what are you working on moving forward? So that way, the audience that's listening, can understand a little bit more on how you might be able to be valuable to them.
I care about family offices and families of great wealth becoming great. And for me, the opportunity of doing that is, yeah, I like to share on my Family Office TV, my YouTube, my Apple podcast, some of my interviews. I'm not that talented, but I'm curious. I ask questions and I'm consistent at it. And I've been very fortunate to have had some great guests on over the weeks, months, and years over time. So that's been a lot of fun. But having an opportunity to build what I'm doing now as a private membership group for families and family offices, to build also Family Office Masterclass, and all of that is discussed, not as good as it could be. I'm still figuring it out, and it's all relatively new, having sold Family Office Association, but under my personal branded website, angelorobles.com. And again, like you said, when you reached out, I am pretty active on effectively all, and definitely LinkedIn, kind of the social quote unquote platforms. So having that opportunity to work consultatively, educationally, and again, connecting the dots with families looking for the most important resource in their family office, undeniably the people. But if the people don't have the proper playbook, the blueprint, especially early on, it probably won't work. So you have to take specific actions to put yourself likely in a position to be more successful. Anyone could reach out to me. I will be traveling, so it'll be a little bit harder to communicate with from about the 10th through the 18th or 19th. Again, I'll be in Europe, primarily in Austria. But the opportunity to email me at angelorobles.com, or look up my website, or DM, or reach out to me. I'd like to say I respond 99% of the time. Won't always be within 24 hours, but it would be nice if I could. And I appreciate you. I appreciate your audience. I have a lot to learn from them as well. And they can reach out, and I look to impart any little slice of knowledge over my decades that I might have accumulated.
No, that's awesome, Angelo. Again, I really appreciate your time and the opportunity for us to sit down and have this conversation. And I think kind of what you touched on earlier, I'm sure we'll have some other episodes to come in the near future.
That would be really exciting. I appreciate being on your show, and thank you so much to your audience.
Awesome. Thank you.
Pleasure.